Frankie Collins is in the transfer portal, at least for right now. What happens next?
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks, as always, for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A shout-out to my everydayers who are here every day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not doing okay. Last night, Frankie Collins elected to enter his name into the transfer portal and is looking for opportunities. Now, for what it's worth, he did mention that a return to Arizona State is within the realm of possibilities. We'll touch on that towards the end of the podcast. But Frankie Collins entering the transfer portal is a very tough pill to swallow. And there's a few reasons why. First of all, you are losing arguably your best player. He did everything for you last year. He scored points. He was a good rebounder, even though he's 6'1". He was a turnover machine. I mean, he was averaging almost 3 steals a game and even set the single season record for Sun Devils with 84. 84 steals in a season is just bonkers. He also ran the court, and he was the guy who was a distributor. He averaged 3 assists a game, which led the team. He was somebody who was really just, able to run the point, and he controlled the offense and he set everything up. He was the guy. He was a great defender. He was good on offense, and just bottom line was not only your best player, but one of your most consistent players, because last year ASU had a lot of inconsistency. You had Frankie Collins and Jose Perez were easily the most consistent guys. After them, you would have big games from Jemiah Neal. You would have big games from Adam Miller. You would have big games from Alonzo Gaffney, and then they would disappear at certain points. You would see little solid gains from Kamari Lands, and Sean Phillips was good on defense. But as a whole, the unit wasn't a consistent enough team for a full 40 minutes, let alone on a game-to-game basis. So now you are taking away what was the only constant that you had on the team. And that's just a huge, huge blow to the Sun Devils. And they have already lost 3 other players, with the aforementioned Jemiah Neal has entered the portal, and both of the true freshmen, Akeel Watson and Braylon Green, also entered the transfer portal. So in case you are wondering, that's 3 guards plus Akeel Watson, who was one of your forwards. And either way, I mean, Watson and Green were depth players for you. It's not like they were full-time starters. So you're losing key depth here beyond Collins and Neal. But now, with Collins and Neal entering, you're losing what's arguably your top 2 players heading into the 2024-25 season. I doubt that Jemiah Neal is back. He entered the portal last year and opted to return. If he's back in there again, I just don't see any way that he is going to return to the program. I think that the writing is on the wall there, and he's going to be looking for a new opportunity in his final season of college. Frankie, he's been a one-time transfer. He came to ASU from Michigan. He's played the last few years here. He instantly was one of the plug-and-play guys as a one-year player for the team in 2022-23. Really grew into a leadership role and just became a much better offensive player in this past season. He's really developed for you, and now you're losing that. And again, it's detrimental. It's not something that's going to be easy to replace, because last year you lost a ton of guys. You lost Luther Muhammad. You lost the Cambridge brothers, Warren Washington, Austin Nunez, Enoch Bache, and oh my God, the Duke Brennan for GCU. You lost so many guys, and it took a lot to be able to fill those holes. But one of the things that helped you at least not completely drown was that Frankie Collins was returning. And Collins was one of the most important players in his first year here. Now, in his second year, he was the most important player. He did a little bit of everything for you. And sure, there were warts to his game. He was, for all accounts and purposes, a bad free throw shooter, under 58%. He did turn the ball over a lot, averaging almost 3 turnovers a game. Like, it's not like he was a perfect player, but easily the best guy you had. Losing the best player you have, man, that feels next to impossible to try and replace. This, to me, is an even bigger impact than what you saw last offseason. Like, you lost your 4 of your 5 starters with the Cambridge brothers, Warren Washington, electing to go into the transfer portal. And you brought back Jemiah Neal, who was a role player. You brought back Frankie Collins. Like, I understand that they did retain Collins to help make the transition a little easier. But now you're losing Collins. And that's just tough, man. Like, I'll tell you that my heart sank when I got the news that Collins was going to be entering the transfer portal. And finding a replacement for Frankie Collins, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it kind of feels like it. It's difficult to replace guys who were so important for you in multiple different assets, and guys who were able to do it offensively and defensively and be able to command the offense and bring a leadership aspect, be a fan favorite. Everybody knows who Frankie Five Finger Collins is. There's a lot that is gone with Frankie Collins potentially leaving the program. And not to be a total pessimist, but I do feel like he is going to be leaning towards going to a new opportunity, whether that is NIL driven, whether that is seeking a championship, whatever it might be. Collins is on his way to potentially a better situation. But again, he could return, and we'll talk about that more at the end of the podcast. But right now, I want to transition into some possible replacements for him. Again, this will not be an easy transition, but this is what I could see the Sun Devils try and do. We're going to get into that in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If your bracket is already busted and you're tired of the old daily fantasy grind where you make your roster, cross your fingers, and hope for the best, maybe you're losing the last leg of your pick'em entry and you're just sick of it. Well, let me tell you about our friends over at Bettor Together. Bettor Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent, and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard. Grab a friend, join the social DFS movement. I can tell you I have personal experience because everyone here over at Locked On got to put together our own little bracket. We picked a teammate, we did the NBA, and it was a ton of fun. It's unlike anything that you've seen before. Very unique. Download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for your chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember the code LOCKEDON because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. Also want to talk to you about our friends over at Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers an amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV and provide you with access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of your big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the sports world, like March Madness, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and find that you are turning down the volume because of all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you. It brings you the biggest stories, all of it, and there's no screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's go ahead and get back into our conversation now. We're going to take a look at replacements. And full disclosure, there is not a perfect replacement here. What you're going to be looking for is a team effort. You need all of your guys on the roster to be able to step up. And that's not going to be easy when, once again, you're losing 4 of your 5 starters from last year. You're losing Frankie to the transfer portal. You're losing Jemiah Neal to the transfer portal. Jose Perez is out of eligibility. Alonzo Gaffney is out of eligibility. You will be plugging in, on paper, Adam Miller, probably Sean Phillips Jr. as your starting center. As of now, Bryant Silabonge, Kamari Lands, and maybe a freshman. This is without any additions through the transfer portal, however. Keep that in mind, because there's plenty of guys out there. Everyone's starting to enter the portal now. I haven't personally taken a look at any of the guys. I know Colorado had a handful of guys entered today. ASU is going to go very aggressive in the transfer portal. They did it last year with the countless number of guys they brought in, including Miller and including Phillips, Silabonge, and Lance. The 4 guys I just mentioned were all through the transfer portal, and they're all going to play big roles as of now. But you are going to need to be aggressive once again in the transfer portal. The Sun Devils have done it the last 2 years, and you've had varying results. I would say, like, you've nailed it with certain guys, but you've also really struggled in other what's the word? Not assets, aspects. That's the word. You've struggled in other aspects to be able to truly replace seamlessly guys that you are losing to the portal. And I mean, you bring in like an Adam Miller to replace Desmond Cambridge Jr. in terms of just a shooter who's hot and cold, but is able to pop off at any given time. That's obviously really good for you, but inconsistent. You bring in Sean Phillips Jr. to replace Warren Washington. You do get some big size, but Washington was a better scorer, and he was close to a walking double-double. Sean Phillips Jr. was dealing with injury. You could tell he wasn't 100%. He also did not get nearly as many minutes as what Warren Washington was getting. Jose Perez comes in, replacing Devin Cambridge. Kind of that do-it-all. Jose Perez knew how to get to the line. Great fit. Then you have to you have to replace those guys all over again. Besides Adam Miller, Sean Phillips Jr., you will be replacing Jose Perez. You are probably replacing Frankie Collins unless he does decide to return to the program. You have a ton of seniors that are gone. Alonzo Gaffney is gone. You have some guys here, but they didn't get a lot of minutes last year. Kamari Lands was a sixth man at best. I mean, he was definitely in a rotational role. Brian Selabonge was also in a rotational role. And I'm a big Selabonge fan, but I'm curious how it's going to look with him out there. Now, what I challenge the Sun Devils to do is obviously you're going to need to get some guard depth because you're losing a lot of guards. As of now, you're losing Collins, Perez, Jemiah Neal, Lance is back, Bryson Long, Zane Meeks, Braylon Green. There's a lot of guys that are gone. There is a lot of guards that are gone. You're going to need to be very aggressive. And this is also a Sun Devils team, keep in mind, that really likes small ball. They've been starting 4 guards each of the last 2 years, and they've had a lot of emphasis on playing with quick guards who can play good defense and get down get down the court for your fast break opportunities. That's tough to replace, and for a team that values that, there's going to be even more pressure. For what it's worth, your recruiting class looks pretty darn good. You've got the number 17 class right now with your only guard coming in is going to be Bo Aldridge, but he's 6'4". You got a lot of size coming in. Jeremiah Nurako is 6'9". Amir Ali is 6'8". Sammy Ine is 6'8". You got a center in Jaden Smith, who's 6'11". They're bringing in size, which is very different for ASU, but I love it. I definitely challenge them to get bigger. But again, this is an offense that is so predicated on having really good guard play and multiple guards that can start for you. I mean, last year, like Jemiah Neal was kind of that tweener, like forward guard. He definitely played closer to the ladder. Alonzo Gaffney was closer to a forward, but again, kind of a similar situation. Like ASU has just really valued their ability to be quick rather than big and long. I don't know if you need to change that. I would like it because I'm typically, whether it's football, basketball, whatever, I like bigger, longer, taller guys. I just think that there's a certain aspect that they bring physically that you don't really find with the smaller, twitchier guys. And of course, you do also need a good balance of that. But ASU has been so heavy on the smaller guys that they do get out rebounded, and it's tough for them to constantly compete. So you do need to get bigger. Now, tying this back into Frankie Collins, it is good you're getting bigger, but you're also going to be looking for a guy to fill that role of running the point, somebody who is going to be a distributor, somebody who's going to be that quick, feisty defensive guy. You don't really have that in the recruiting class. And the closest thing you have on the roster right now is Adam Miller. And Miller, don't get me wrong, I'm really excited about Miller. Adam Miller might be the player I'm most excited about heading into the offseason. It's him or it's Sean Phillips. Like, those are the two that I think could have really big roles for ASU this upcoming season. But beyond Miller, it's a lot of unknowns. And this recruiting class doesn't have a ton of guards that's coming in. It's a lot of size that's coming in. You're going to have to attack the transfer portal. Unless you have complete 100% confidence that Adam Miller can fill the shoes of Frankie Collins if he does leave, that's going to be tough. It's going to be a remarkably tough situation for Bobby Hurley and the Sun Devils to try and navigate this. Of course, he did mention, Frankie Collins himself, that there is a chance that he does return to ASU. It's on the table for him. Now, is that a 5% chance? Is it a 50% chance? I have no idea. But the potential for him to come back is on the table, and we're going to talk about it more in just a second. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Iowa State Cyclones can only be described as the Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country, and they have a date with Illinois this Thursday in the Sweet 16. You also have the Nissan Rogue and the Nissan Armada to check out as well. So take a look at the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. One more that I absolutely love is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And the eBay Guaranteed Fit means your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here to give you 24/7 coverage for the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on free Fire TV channels app. Let's round out our conversation, and let's take a look at what the game plan is for Arizona State. Is there a chance that Frankie Collins comes back? Absolutely. The man said as much himself, but should ASU count on it? I don't know. If he does return, and I mean, we did lay out kind of a possibility of what you could do with Adam Miller taking on a bigger role or attacking the transfer portal. We did talk about that, but if he returns, what does that mean for the program? Well, for starters, you bring back your best player. And I don't think that needs any more saying than that. I think that speaks for itself for how pivotal and how important it is that he returns. Typically, more often than not, when you bring back your best player for your team, you're going to have better success. Having to replace Frankie Collins, as I have said, is a tall task at worst. It is near impossible at best. Or flip it. It's a small task. Or I don't remember. Just flip what I said. It's not easy at all. And that's where you find yourself. He could come back, though. He said as much. It's on Twitter. It's on social media. In a little graphic he made. Having him back would be huge. And there's a few things here that I think could lead him to return. The first and biggest is that Bobby Hurley is returning. Bobby Hurley is the guy who brought him here. Bobby Hurley is the one who placed him in the starting lineup. Bobby Hurley is the one who has entrusted Frankie Collins to be the guy on the court, off the court, in the locker room, as a student, whatever it has been. Bobby Hurley has been one of the main focal points of giving Frankie Collins every opportunity that he could ask for. He transfers here from Michigan, and again, he's immediately put into this kind of role. That's really tough to find when you're talking about being a depth player and then moving over to a brand new program. He averaged 11 minutes at Michigan. Second year, when he moved to ASU, 27.9. Last year, 32.3. He's just getting more and more time on the court, and it is in a starting spot. He only started one game at Michigan, Last year, he started 34 of 35 games. This year, he started 32 of 32. That's tough to find. And don't get me wrong, a guy like Frankie Collins is going to go to most programs and find himself in a starting role. At worst, he could go into a Remy Martin role with a team like Kansas and just be a really good six-man. But at ASU, he's a starter. And that's an attractive quality. That's something that could very well decide what Frankie Collins does. And it's not the first time ASU has had a guy return from the transfer portal. But we just talked about it. Jemiah Neal entered the portal last offseason, returned from the portal last offseason. Frankie Collins could do the same. On the football field, BJ Green entered the portal last offseason and decided to come back for the 2023 season. You saw CJ Fight, one of our defensive tackles, with a new staff, keep in mind, with a new staff. He decommitted and recommitted. ASU is not completely inept when it comes to getting guys to stay. They have shown that it is entirely possible for them to retain these guys. And that speaks for itself. You also have seen some big strides with things that power guys to want to move on to different programs. That, of course, being NIL, whatever it might be. They have made massive strides in becoming a better NIL team, in becoming a better NIL program, and becoming a university that is able to use their NIL resources. Frankie Collins, I can't promise you he's not going to make seven figures at another program and more money than he would ever sniff at ASU. But ASU has something more to offer than they did when he first got here. Frankie said as much on Twitter when someone was accusing him of leaving Michigan to go to Arizona State and chase money. Look, if there's one thing I know about ASU, you're not transferring to Arizona State University with NIL at the forefront. You're just not, at least not yet. Maybe down the road, sure, but Collins comes here before Kenny Dillingham even starts making the strides to start activating the Valley. Frankie came here for an opportunity. He could stay. Now that NIL is growing, maybe that's what gets his attention. Or maybe, like Frankie said himself, money's just not a factor for him. So yeah, ASU may not have the same NIL pull that a program like Kansas has, or a program like Duke or North Carolina. Whoever might be interested in him could easily have a chance to throw some more money than ASU could at Frankie Collins. But he said before it's not about the money. Now, could it be now? Of course, because he's going into his last year. Why not cash out? But from what we can tell, that's not who he is. Who he is a guy who is day in, day out, putting 100% of his effort on the court, offensively, defensively, as a veteran, as a leader. He does all of it. He's a good student. He's everything that you want out of this program. He's the fan favorite. He is valued here, and he's valued at Arizona State more than he will find at any other program. I believe that in my heart of hearts. If he were to stay and have another season like he did, I mean, there's a chance you put his jersey up in the rafters. He is that good of a player. He's been that important of a player for you. That matters, not just for us, but for him. And that could be what sways him to stay first go. It's a tough situation to see guys leave year after year after year. And the Sun Devils are behind the eight ball for so many of these guys. But it's not impossible for Frankie Collins to return. Do you guys think he's coming back? Do you think he's gone? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrats36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. wherever you get your shows. Hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Of course, thanks for making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Guys, I appreciate you for tuning in. We are going to be continuing our spring ball coverage tomorrow and taking a look at it on Friday as well. We have plenty to talk about on the football field, on the basketball court. So now's never been a better time to subscribe. I'll see you guys later. And until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.